Welcome back to another race analysis. We're jumping right off with another Tuesday night crit, and here we're looking at how on the very first lap someone drops a wheel coming out of the bottom corner, and all of a sudden 500, 600, 700 watts just trying to get back on. Two guys already went up the road, and then into the bottom corner a few guys sprinted out, and all of a sudden it's panic stations behind, and we are looking at this race being split up with less than 2 minutes on the clock. Fortunately, Ryan Underwood here gets on the front and moves to close it down. I'm at 170 beats per minute at the end of the first lap. And lucky for me, as I'm coming around to the back of the group, things get stitched up together at the front. Just over a lap later, and two riders launch brilliantly out of the middle of the bunch and very quickly develop a bit of a lead. Near the end of lap 4, this guy in white goes up the road to try to bridge across to the two leading. And halfway through lap 5 you can just see him catching up. So now there's three guys up the front, off the front of this race, and things are starting to look a little bit more dangerous. I'm not concerned. It's really early in this race. We've got a whole lot of firepower back in the pack, and I'm sure it's all going to come back together. Sure enough, just at the start of lap 6 you can just see the group of three up the road. They're clearly coming back, and we've got them. And they'll come back any second now. Except they kind of don't. You can see one guy jumping across the front and the pace coming out of this chase group. And by the time we get to the bottom corner here again, you can see that the group of three has now re-established its gap, and the guy who's chasing is nearly all the way across. And by the time we get to the start-finish line again, the chaser has managed to get across, and there's someone else bridging that gap in white as well. And this is where this race really becomes challenging. As we emerge sort of into this period where we're passing another grade, you can see the group of four going around the corner already. The guy in white's just coming back, but unfortunately two more guys, including Jerry Prinsloo, have jumped across, and once again the pace comes right out of this peloton. So now we've got four up the road, two going to join them, and they've got some absolute diesels in there. We've got Jerry, we've got Nick Underwood, Robert Reed, Corey Bounds, Peter Burgess. I've talked about Peter before. Big engine there. And these guys are a lot of the people that often do a lot of the pulling back in the peloton. So this is a dangerous move, but I'm not worried. You know, we're only 10 minutes into this race. There's still another half an hour of racing plus 2, so, you know, this is surely going to come back, right? Not even half a lap later, and I can really see that group pulling out a big gap. There's been a little bit of rotation, some pretty strong people near the front, but the pace has come out again. So I jump on the front and I'm going to try to pull a turn, see if I can put some inroads into this. I haven't really done any work yet, so I'm pretty fresh. We're into the cross headwind. There's a headwind coming sort of ahead and from the right. So I'm keeping it on the right to try to give as much protection for the rest of the group as possible. Once again, we're going past, I think this is D grade, but the group ahead's miles away. They've probably already got 20 seconds gap, and so this is looking really dangerous. Now, one thing that happens that I realise pretty quickly here is that there are a few people in this bunch who don't want things to come back together. If you look behind me, the guy who's letting the wheel go, that's Liam Underwood. His dad, Nick Underwood, is in the break. Nick's always a good shot in a breakaway. But Liam's not going to want to help the chase while his dad's up the road. And if you watch through the full video, which I've got on my channel, you'll see that he sits at or near the front for nearly the entirety of this chase, just subtly disrupting things, or not so subtly. Anyway, the chase goes on. I'm having a bit of trouble in this bottom corner today. I don't know why, but I'm just losing a bit too much speed. In this case, I drop a bike length off Nick, which turns out to be a good thing because he goes a bit agricultural. Unfortunately, I had to punch a bit to get back on the wheel. But he managed to keep it upright. Unfortunately though, even at this point, the chase is incredibly disorganised. Two guys attack off the front. Alistair, who's just been pulling a turn, goes backwards. And now instead of working together, I've got Alex Persico up here doing a massive job trying to close some gaps. But instead of him working on the front trying to pull the brake back, he's just chasing little gaps. I finished the job, I think. But once again, this effort's really wasted because instead of chasing the group up the front, up the road, I'm just chasing splinter groups from the peloton. At this point though, the group up ahead's only got about 15 or 18 seconds, I reckon. A lap later, there's been a little bit of organisation. Pace is beginning to come out, and once again Liam sort of slides out of the rotation. In fairness to Liam, he did race the Junior A's immediately before this race, so it may not be tactical, and maybe more that he's just exhausted. The kid's super strong though, and he's going to go a long way. Cat Nicholson gets on the front. I'm not happy with how fast we're going, so I pull through early. And I make a bit of a tactical error here. So I'm on the front, coming into the bottom corner, and I take the bottom corner, as well as I sometimes do. I don't think I punched too hard out of this, but you can see behind me in the rear camera that there's big gaps opening up behind. But where I made a mistake is that I was coming off the front of the race in the headwind section. And the difficulty here is that when you do come off the front, I've just flicked the elbow, and this guy in the red and white of Black Chrome, Jacob Casey, he pulls through. But now I'm still doing 260 watts, and I'm going backwards, and I'm having a lot of difficulty getting back into the line. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can just take the power off entirely, go to the back of the line and sprint to get back on. I don't want to do that. I want to stay near the front, but then trying to get back into the line whilst in a headwind. I got lucky this time, and I think it might have been Alex let me in just behind Alistair. But a couple of times I've done this, and I've ended up having to burn an extra match just to try to stay with the group as I'm going backwards. Once again, things sort of disintegrate, get disorganised near the front. There's Liam once again. And a lap later, and we have made absolutely no progress in chasing down this break up the road. Frank's steaming away on the front. He's done a lot of work already. You can see him monstering away at a massive gear there. But this whole race, this whole chase was sort of half the time we were working well together, half the time we were 6 wide across the road and barely moving, and that really wasn't making much headway. So jumping a whole lot later in the race, the break still got at least 20, 30, possibly more seconds. And I've been on the front for about 3/4 of a lap, and then pull one of possibly my stupidest ever moves. Alistair, who's been struggling, he had to make up a few people who dropped wheels. He pulls off, and I see that I've got a gap for some reason, even though I've been sitting on the front, and I decide to give it some beans and see if I can make a solo bridge. I guess after having spent 2 minutes pulling on the front, I was feeling fresh than usual. Maybe it's half an hour into the race and I've finally warmed up. In any event, Alex Canane sees that. He closes the gap, and that's a match burnt for absolutely no reason whatsoever. It did give me the idea that I might try a late race attack. I thought it was very unlikely that we were ever going to get this break back. And so I decided that when I was feeling a bit fresher, so maybe after a few laps, not pulling turns, maybe with 3 or 4 laps to go, I'd give it a go and see what I could do. Unfortunately though, as we came around the bottom corner on that same lap, the grade ahead of us had a big crash. They were all across the road. There's bottles going everywhere, and our grade slowed right down. And while it looked like we had been making some progress on the break in the last couple of laps, it took us a while for us to get back up to speed, and that probably gave the break an extra 5-10 seconds. They were ahead of the crash when it happened, so they weren't held up by it. And as you can see, we're just kind of rolling around now. And that was the end of any real chance of us bringing that break back. So all credit to everyone who was up the road. There were only 5 in the end who finished, and Jerry, who won the race, said it was a real slog the whole race, but yeah, that was the end of it. So we tried a few more times. I think I pulled through a few more times just to try to get things restarted, but realising it wasn't going to come back with 2 laps to go, Alistair and I decided we were going to try practicing a team sprint. We've got the Tour of the Fleurieu coming up in a few weeks, and so we decided seeing how we would go with me leading Alistair out. I yelled at Alistair to get on my wheel, and he stuck to my wheel like a limpet for pretty much the rest of these last 2 laps. So with Alistair on my wheel, we're coming into 1 lap to go. Alex Canane up front, I can't decide whether he was going for an attack or whether he was just trying to get the pace going up. He actually unclips there. By myself, I'm quite happy sitting at about 5th, 6th, 7th wheel with 1 lap to go at Vic Park. But with a sprinter in my wheel, it was more important to make sure that nothing went up the road. Canane does seem to go for an attack. Black Chrome in the red and white lights it up. I'm quite happy just to sit in for a sec, but I wasn't sure if Alex was going to be able to keep the wheel of Black Chrome. He does a pretty good job. But then again, my race, I know, is ending by the time I've hit the bottom corner of this straight. So with Black Chrome slowing down, I hit the front, and now it's time for me to empty the tank. I actually didn't go too hard for this. I was looking around to make sure Alistair was there. I was also looking around to see if anyone else was coming past. And I mean, to be honest, we're sprinting for 6th place, so there's really no team's going to be laying it on the line. But with a sprinter in my wheel, I emptied the tank, heard him yell that he wanted the corner, so I let him go and got off the gas. Liam Underwood manages to get into Alistair's wheel, and according to the results, pips him at the line. Alistair was pretty confident that he had him. Obviously, there's going to be no photo finish for 6th and 7th, so nobody really cares. And then Alistair was able to hold that all the way to the end and set a few new power records crossing the line. So from my perspective, that worked really well as a lead out. I felt like I laid it down where I needed to. I probably could have gone around the corner a bit quicker and maybe got Alistair out of the corner, saved him a few seconds in the wind. But Alistair's got a long sprint, so it kind of doesn't matter. Anyway, that was a lot of fun, even though we didn't get anywhere near the front of the race. But we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.